This conference will now be recorded.
Informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion, but there is no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. Two items on the agenda. So we have the first strategic planning retreat. That's on page 3, of course. And Terry is joining us, and he'll be helping us work through that. And then we have the comp plan update goal 19 on page 55 after that. So we will go ahead and get started. I'll turn it over to our county manager for our strategic planning retreat.
Thank you, Chair Coelho, members of the board. I know it's already been a long day for you, so sorry to pile on a little bit. I want to welcome Terry back as he helps walk us through what's the second year of our strategic planning process. And I thought what I would do real quick, and thanks Amanda for throwing up the agenda for today. I'm going to be giving a quick overview of where we came from and where we are going and how this meeting fits into the broader context of our efforts. But just as a little background, we started this process back in January of 2020, and it really focused that first year on a more comprehensive strategic plan. So it included vision, mission, values, a situational assessment that then led to these focus areas and the actual tasks within those focus areas. And so that plan was adopted by the board in 2021, early 2021. The whole notion to this process is that we revisit the vision, mission, values, and the assessment piece every 3 years. And in the other years, we just look at the tasks and at the focus areas so that we make sure that as we move forward with this project work, that those projects and the budget reflect your board's priorities for the next year. So this is year 2. We're not revisiting those underpinning elements of the plan, the vision, mission, and values. We're really focused on what we said we were going to do this year, and then get your board's input on what you'd like to carry forward for next year, and if there's anything new that you would like us to be tackling along the way. So that's where we are. This is the first meeting. We'll get as far as we can get, and then there may be a need for a second meeting just to tie up any loose ends and make the final recommendations. So I'm going to turn it over to Terry, I guess, at this point, and let him do his magic for us on this Friday afternoon.
Thank you, Don, and hello, commissioners. It's good to see you again. I'm going to follow along with the packet. There's an agenda in the packet. Let me just clarify that when we put this together, it was a retreat that was going to happen in November, and we took the full 2 hours, and now you have a second item on the comp plan. So the times, we're going to try to compress those a little bit if we can. And if we can't get it all done, then that's okay. Also, we can come back to it at the second retreat. This is a lot to do in one retreat. But the basic idea is that Amanda and I are going to give you an overview of what's been done so far. Then you'll be able to talk about the objectives for the plan update, and then we'll summarize that and talk about the next steps. There's an item in your packet that shows up as page 14, and it is a memo from me to you. You can turn to that if you want to, but that's really what my 2 or 3 minutes of introduction are going to go from. And what that memo says is, I think the points of agreement. There isn't a strategic plan. The strategic plan was pretty successful in its first year. It said that there would be a strategic plan for 5 years. The county's on that path. The commissioners reiterated that they were on that path also. And as Don said, that the vision, mission, values are typically not done annually. So there was a quick review. They looked okay. We're staying with those. And the purpose of today's meeting then is to try to see what was accomplished, what is in process, what did we say a year ago that we wanted to do, and what new things have come up since then, primarily through a survey that we did in November. And so we're now down sort of to the second half of that memo page where we say now we're in retreat number 1, where we're going to figure out what we're going to put in there. And most of the material in your packet is about the work done by staff, where that means, I would say, primarily Amanda, secondarily Don, and maybe, I don't know if I can make it into third place or not, but a lot of work done on trying to consolidate and make sense of where we are. And I just as by way of preface, let me say that this is always complicated because as I'm about to point out, when you put everything together, the first list was a list of about 135 items. And so what we have said many times in our last year of work, and Don has said it also, is, and now we've got a year of experience, how many of those items can a board really get to and make good progress on? And we've answered that at least for 1 year. And you were able to deal with, we said, you'd be lucky if you can get done with 12. You probably completed 12 and got your hands into another half a dozen. So, but I'll leave it to you to decide how hard that was. It was a lot of work. And so it's not 137, we know that. So what I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to do is to show the process we use to go from the carryovers from your first plan. And by carryovers, I mean those things that had not been completed or would not be completed by June of this year, but we're still in the plan. And it turns out that you really did a lot of good work there, and we'll come back to it. But you completed most of your tier 1 stuff. You got started on some tier 2, and some of the tier 3 you didn't get to, which is what we expected. So what we're going to do is show you that process and show you then how staff got down from 137 to 13 for your consideration. And I want to close by saying those 13 for your consideration are just a starting point. Anything that we have eliminated, you can bring back. Anything that we haven't talked about for whatever reason, you can bring in. And anything that's on the list that you don't think should be there, you can take out. Now is the time to do that. And Amanda and I will be helping record your discussion on that process, trying to get to that conclusion at the end. So I think, well, I'll say this. If there are any questions about the process, you can show that you can ask now, but otherwise, probably the way we have it structured is Amanda will go through the stuff and then you can ask questions about everything we presented and then move on to your discussion. Okay, and then when I get to the discussion, when we get to discussion, I'll give you a couple of instructions there on what we're up to. So I can't see everybody here. Teresa, are you on the line somewhere or not?
Yes, I am.
Okay, do you see any hands up for questions? I don't see everybody's screen at the same time.
No, I don't.
Okay, good. Okay, Amanda, are you ready to go? Screens are changing, I think so.
Okay, can you all see the survey results page?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So good afternoon. I'm just gonna kind of, like Terry talked about, go over our process and some of the data points. So just first to note, the survey that we sent out, we had 56 respondents, and that included your board, 21 staff members, and 30 stakeholders. There are a long list of stakeholders. If you would like, I can go through that. I'm going to skip it for now, but we did engage a lot of county council committees and just other community partners that we currently work with or have worked with. And so most notably in the beginning, when we got our initial results, we had, Terry had mentioned that list of over 100. So that included carryover items from this current fiscal year strategic plan that haven't or will not be completed by the end of the fiscal year. And that also includes new items. So there were 77 highest priority, 41 medium priority, and 3 lowest priority objectives. With that, just the strategic plan research that's out there indicates obviously a much smaller list is feasible. And so staff is estimating the number of objectives that can successfully be completed within a fiscal year is about 10 to 14. That being said, each of those items is going to be a little bit different in terms of the feasibility and complexity. So that is up to your board to adjust whether that list is much smaller because the items are more complex or much larger because they're easy to kind of go through a bunch of little smaller items. So first we had round 1, which is essentially taking that list of over 100 items and narrowing them down. A lot of that was just consolidation and removing lower item objectives, and that created this list of 83, which is still very long. You can see we categorized it into the 5 different focus areas. And from there, so follow me, the logic, it makes sense, but it can be a little bit tricky. So for round 2, essentially what we did, we further consolidated, so taking like items and combining them, and then also identifying of that list of 83, which of those items didn't necessarily fit within a strategic plan objective, but maybe fit within a different category. So these first categories are going to show you include items from the list of 83, but these were items that staff felt may not necessarily fit as an objective. So this accounts for some of the list. We have items in terms of legislative priorities, topics for board discussion. So that might be something that needs to be a little bit more expanded upon before we can get a specific objective out of that. There are non-designated items. So that means whether we need more information to figure out if that's within the county's role, or we know right off the bat that's outside of the county's role. And then also there were items identified that came up in the survey that had to do with the ongoing effort. So that was stuff that we had already indicated would be completed by the end of the fiscal year. So then that's noted there on the bottom left. And so from here, the remaining items from that 83 list, we combined into this much smaller list. And so I can go through, if you would like, I'll try to do this fairly quickly, some of the carryovers kind of just as a refresher. So these are items that were from this fiscal year strategic plan, but whether they haven't been started yet because maybe they were lower on the priority list, a tier 3 item, or they've been started, but whether it's roadblocks or other items need to be completed first, they will not be completed by the end of the fiscal year. So as we look at this suggested list of priorities, some of the carryovers we have, sorry, let me just pull up my list here. So the tier 1A for governance is the countywide communication engagement plan, internal, external. So that pulls from 3A from the current plan, which is the internal communication plan. Another objective that's a carryover was 3B, which is the equity inclusion program for county services, which you see there in tier 2. And then the third from governance that's a carryover is 3C, which was the youth advisory board, which you see under there in tier 3. And infrastructure, there weren't any carryovers. However, there were a few items that got pulled from different focus areas that were reclassified within infrastructure. So
Amanda, Commissioner Thompson has a question.
Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. I also can't see everybody in the list since I'm screen sharing.
Thank you. communication as always. Is this page that you have up, is this a page in our packet? And could you refer to the pages in our packet when you're speaking? Because I'm looking for broadband and I don't see it, and I don't know if you're going too fast. All right, so you're on page, okay,
It's page
Tell me what it
13 of the
says.
packet.
page 15, thank you.
13.
13, well, here's my problem. My packet came and that part with the page numbers is cut off, so it makes it a challenge.
Oh no.
Thank you.
It's technically page 11 in that specific document, which you might see at the very bottom. That's just in black, and then if it's not cut off, it would be in gray, kind of what's shown on the screen in the bottom right corner, which would say page 13.
Amanda, I think that Commissioner Webb also had a question.
I'm sorry for my flurry of activity. I have workmen in the house who promised to be out by 2 and weren't. So, but I'm confused. My packet was also very disorganized. And so I have, in some areas, I have a page that is from the way Teresa always does our packets, in a little box. But then I have page A, 1 and 2, page D, and then other ones are just plain page numbers. So I'm kind of confused.
Yeah, and I apologize for the confusion. Part of that is because we've included a fair number of documents that have been compiled throughout this process. Each of those documents already had page numbers affiliated with it. So I'm going to be going based off of the number that hopefully is not cut off on everybody's pages, but it's the gray one at the bottom, which I'll just kind of show in the screen right here, which
Okay,
should say for this one would be page 13.
And let me say one thing to see if I can help this out. The page that Amanda is showing you right now, which is labeled page 11 or 13, or should be somewhere around there, that's the last page of this presentation. We have a couple more slides that we'll use as part of the discussion, but everything that follows that is about the strategic plan is background material. And most of that is the entire text and summary of the survey. So that information we're not covering again. We've already incorporated that in the pages that Amanda has already described to you, but that information is there if you want to see the detail. So if the packets are the way we think they are, and they may not be, most of what you need to see is in the first 10 to 12 pages of the packet.
Right, we wanted to provide the other report.
From my standpoint, I went through the whole thing. I'm sorry, and I didn't get that. So I have a lot of questions about, I guess, what now I'm understanding is the survey results that I didn't see in the beginning.
Yeah,
So
those, you're probably referring to 2 documents. The first one, I just have these printouts. It's probably going to be, looks like this, which is the initial results. And then we also provided the other packet, which looks like this, which is the individual respondents. And so we just wanted to include that. So then that way, if in the discussion we want to go back and talk about any of the items that aren't incorporated in this list that we're looking at now on the screen, we kind of have those as a reference and to see kind of where they were categorized in terms of highest priority, medium priority, lowest priority, or even just who provided that feedback, whether it was board, staff, or stakeholders. So I apologize for the confusion because it is a lot of documents, and this it doesn't start out with an agenda item summary, which kind of qualifies each of the attachments, which is good feedback because then I can definitely do that for this final retreat. So again, I apologize for all the page numbers because there are quite a few.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So just please forgive my questions as they pop up. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Thompson had a question.
Thank you, sir. I'm not quite sure how to proceed, so we'll just kind of fumble on through this if you bear with us. So I see priorities on page 10. I see another list of priorities on page 11. What I'm not clear is how the two relate to each other. Because
so this is part of the logic that can be a little bit confusing. So I'll scroll back up to that first page, which I'm thinking you're also including on the page 10. So both of these pages, when you're looking at all of those bullet points, include the entire list of 83 items, which I'll just scroll up, is this list.
right.
So in those different boxes are different categories. So this first page are items from that list of 83 that staff felt didn't necessarily qualify as a strategic plan objective. We still wanted to note them and highlight them because they were included in the survey results and feedback. But then the following list are items from that list of 83, obviously much more consolidated, that we felt fell within the strategic plan objectives qualifiers.
Okay, so here's what I'll tell you. For me, childcare and broadband are absolutely essential top tier items for our strategic plan, so that I don't see them on what I see as page 11, this page you've got up. That's problematic for me.
Well, and if I might, Chair Quirrell, members of the board. So I just want to explain a little bit more about what's going on, just to help, hopefully, with the discussion. Is that as we went through the survey, we also married the projects we had been working on this year, and that was childcare and broadband for this year. And for the childcare, the goal was to develop a childcare plan, and that is in the works right now. And for broadband, it was to develop, rural strategies to deal with the underserved populations. And the two fronts on that were the Jewel area project, which we accomplished through the ARPA. It's currently in the construction process. And then we had the coal pack process, which that is coming to then recommendations, which Ariane will be at a future board meeting to lay out what those recommendations were. So it's not that we didn't include them, it was us thinking that we'd made significant progress, at least on those elements last year. If it doesn't mean that they're not carry forward efforts this next year, it's just that we have been working on them for the entire year. We're making substantial progress. If the board would like to see those continue on in the strategic plan, that's fine. I mean, all you have to do is just let us know that. It's just that this has been kind of a winnowing process where we took all of what we heard from the survey, based upon all of the information we've received from the board over the last year. We tried to then narrow that down, and then we tried to narrow it down further as just a placeholder for then the board to then add to it as we have this conversation. So this is not representative of staff's recommendations as much as it is a placeholder for further conversation and for further massaging by your board, if that makes sense.
Amanda, could you go back to the infrastructure page, page 4, or got a different number? Yeah, there we go. So Commissioner Thompson, there, if you look at that diagram and you look over in the left-hand column, completion by June 30, 2022, those are estimates, and we might not make it. But if that were strictly true, then what this is saying is that broadband, as defined in the plan, will have been completed, at least that phase of it, by 2022. So that would mean that it would be redundant to then put it in the plan again. Now, if you conclude that there's, well, we finished that part of it, but now that we've done that, there's more important stuff to do, and the commission, that needs to stay on the strategic plan, that's a completely legitimate point of view. And so, but in order, as Don said, in order to do the winnowing, we just said, okay, it says it's going to be done. Let's assume that it's done.
So I understand, and I appreciate this clarification. Here's what I'll say. winnowing isn't accurate because I'm looking at my own capacity issues to work on these things, and broadband takes up an enormous amount of time. So I'm eager to have our plan and my work reality coincide however possible. And I assume the other commissioners would like something like that as well, because we as commissioners, just as you as staff, have capacity issues. We can do what we can do, and then what? And broadband's still taking up a lot of my time. Thank you.
I see that Commissioner Bangs has a question.
I have more of a comment. I would like to see the relationship to other entities like NACO and AOC added into the internal-external communication and engagement plan there in Tier 1 under governance. I feel like if we're going to be communicating, let's pull it all in. And then in environmental quality, I'd like to cross out environmental quality action team, but then pull in water assessment and inventory water needs, but make that county-wide, and focus on water infrastructure for all of our separate small districts.
If commissioners, if I may just jump in here, if it's all right with your board, just the way that we had structured this presentation is, I was just going to finish up with this slide, and then I'll take you to the part where it's a live matrix where we can go over each of those items, and then that way we can add in these new ones or recategorize and kind of start that initial discussion. Does that work for everyone?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. So I can keep, if this works for everyone, I can keep going, just kind of identifying the carryover items, or we can just jump right to the discussion if everyone's kind of ready for that.
I mean, I guess if I could just say, Amanda, I think the board's probably ready to talk about the priority. So if we can get to that, that would be great.
Awesome. So I'm just going to show you this first slide here to kind of give you the framework of the matrix that we created. So on the left-hand side, you will see all those items that were in the slide that we were just looking at in terms of suggested priorities. On the right side, we have the matrix that we'll be operating out of. So you see that its importance and urgency. We have essentially bottom left corner would be low importance, low urgency, and top right corner would be high importance, high urgency. And so we have Tier 1 and Tier 2 are categorized as due. Just in the framework that was adopted, it was identified that Tier 1 and Tier 2 are prioritized in the way that we try to complete them within the fiscal year, if possible. And then Tier 3, it says schedule, because oftentimes there are a lot of other steps that need to happen, but we would still want to have it on the list because it's
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry. I don't know where we are.
So this isn't part
this
of the
matrix?
packet.
Do we have this matrix, this priority matrix in our package?
No, because this is a live document. So I'll show you a little bit what that means. So I'll
Is
go
there any
to
way to make it any larger? I can't read it, and even with my reading glasses on, I can't read it.
Yeah, so let me zoom in a little bit. So over here, like I was mentioning, we have the tier items, which are identified as due for Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 3 is schedule, and then we have the yellow and black box. The black one is delete, which is essentially items that will move to this part of the matrix where it's not a priority or not designated, and then yellow, we identified them as the thankless tasks, which essentially are topics for board discussion where we can really kind of break down what other objectives might come from that. So that wouldn't necessarily be objectives for this plan. And so this next slide just helps. Again, this is a little zoom out, so I'll zoom in. This shows where all of those items fall within that previous slide that I showed you, which you do have in your packet. So this one, if we kind of just zoom in, we have Tier 1, and so these are categorized by color too. So we have purple, which is the governance, orange, infrastructure, blue economic development, green is the environmental quality, and red is the social services objectives. And so here is just an outline of based on staff suggestions. And then in these lower boxes, these were some of the items that were identified in those, essentially in those yellow boxes in that slide that we were looking at. So what we're going to be operating out of today is this matrix, which again, as we're kind of, you know, zooming in on certain tiers, I'll zoom in on the actual matrix as well. You'll note that this is just a little bit different because on the right-hand column, we have extra sticky notes here that I can move into the boxes. And so just like if we're adding anything in, I can add this in here and then move it into the box. So just as a basic example, if we're identifying that maybe the AOC water needs study, which I've highlighted here in the tier 1 box, isn't necessarily tier 1, and that's something that's going to happen, you know, 2 years from now or something, but we still want it in tier 3, then I would just move it over here as a visual. So this is just to kind of help us as we're going through the discussion so we can kind of see it all at once. And then I don't know if Terry, you kind of want to take it away from here, and then I'll just kind of be helpful in the background, moving things around and taking notes.
Yeah, just if I could just have I guess a couple minutes to say how we would proceed. So what you're looking at right now are the items that made it through the filter spread out as either tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. What you can do now is move them anywhere you want to, including off the board. And over on the right-hand side are blank items in the 5 objective areas where we can move things back on. So per Commissioner Thompson's point of view, if it's not appropriate to take broadband off yet, then we would go to infrastructure, write broadband, and Amanda would drag that up into tier 1. And this, now we can see where we are, and this is the technique that we're going to try to use to make this happen. I will tell you that I have high hopes for this. Amanda put this together. I haven't seen anybody do anything like this before, where in real time you're just dragging the stuff, and in the end you've got a record of it. So we'll see how that goes. The one request that I would make, and is that the commissioners will, as you're doing, raise your hands, and either Teresa or Commissioner Coelho will acknowledge you, and then you take your turn. What I would like to do, if possible, is not get into this problem where 2 people have an idea. Commissioner X wants to talk about X, and Commissioner Y wants to talk about Y. Commissioner X says something about X, and then it's Commissioner Y's turn, except Y is very different from X. And now a bunch of people that they've heard about X now want to talk about X. And you end up with this, you get 3 conversations going at the same time, and they don't get resolved. What I'd like to do to avoid that is to be able to say, first person up gets the first question. Questions are, then there's anybody who has anything about that says their piece, and we get to where a point where the commission thinks it can't go any farther. And then we move on to the person who was number 2 coming up with the new item, and we'll keep the queue going that way. So that's all I'll be doing. I'll be looking to Commissioner Coelho and others to keep track of who's there. Amanda will try that also, but I'm going to be trying to listen to substance. Amanda's going to be trying to get stuff on the board, and that's how we plan to proceed. So are there any, and the hope is then by the end of our time, we've got a list of tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 that looks about right and is somewhere between 10 and 15 items.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Terry. Yeah, I see that Commissioner Bangs has her hand up, so we'll let her kick off here.
So are we ready to start under governance? Does that sound like a good plan?
Wherever is good.
Okay, so I would like to pull relationships to other entities, AOC and NACO, into tier 1 when we're talking about communication and engagement. That's it for me for governance.
Okay, hold on a minute. Amanda, do you see that? Is that, Commissioner Banks, is that just so I'm having trouble reading this now too. Is that a new item or is that dragging it from one place to another? Okay, we got it in there. It was having to type it up again. Okay, thank you. And just to be clear, just because it goes in there doesn't mean that it's going to stay there. Does anybody want to comment on that part of things, or you want to just keep, if not, then yeah, Commissioner Thompson, you have a question on that one?
Absolutely support that.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Webb has a question.
Commissioner Webb.
I'm sorry to be so recalcitrant. Do I understand that this slide that we're looking at is not in our packet? This is a reality check. Is this not in our packet? Is it or is it not in our packet?
It is not in the packet. It is a live document, so that way as you discuss the items, it can get moved around. So no, it is not in the.
Okay, so the items which are not shown here, which are to the right side of this page, which are the larger, these 5 issues. When we're discussing them, are we going backward to whatever, see? Yeah, I mean, are we going back to the pages that were previous, that had the sort of list, page 11?
Commissioner, something that might be helpful, because it sounds like you're looking for a visual to kind of go off of as you're looking at the computer screen as well. So of the packet, the pages that would be the most helpful are this page, which is technically on the bottom, it says page 11, or in terms of packet, it would be page 13. And then also other items, like Commissioner Bangs had just noted, the relationship with AOC and other entities, that came from here. So I think having this page available to review as well might be helpful, because those will be all the items that are already on the matrix. And then anything else might be items that were mentioned in the survey results.
Yeah. Let me just say that a slightly different way. In your packet is all the information that we have, and it just depends upon what level of detail you want to go back to. On this slide, it's just that the thing that has the Amanda, turn back to that page. This slide primarily has the page after that, the information on this page, and that's what's across the top is tier 1, 2, and 3. And it's also got some of the information on the page above that, on the yellow page, Amanda. And then you could stop there, but if you wanted to go back deeper, go back another, you could go back to all 83 items, many of which we've already got on the pages that follow. And if you want to see how we got to 83, you could go all the way back to the survey results that look like this, where there are 120 different items. And so all those lists are available to you in the packet to look at, but you don't have to look at those. It may be that you're just looking at, and also the list of what was in the previous plan. So that's the source of everything. All the source material is there on the about 8 pages that you have. But what we did for this exercise was take the compressed version, which is the next slide. Amanda, one more down. This is mainly what's on that slide that you do not have, the live document that Amanda's working with. You have those items, but they're in this format.
I see that Commissioner Bangs and Commissioner Thompson have a question. So Commissioner Bangs.
I wanted to make sure that when we're talking about countywide communication, that takes into account local municipalities also. It seems to be unclear, and if it does not take into account local municipalities, I would like to add that.
Commissioner Bangs, members of the board, what I would say is that, at least in my notion of that, it does mean all of the intergovernmental communications also. And we will make that clear.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. The blue economic development study and strategy development, in addition to CEDAR, I would like to see COLPAC and CSAC, CSAC, that's County Solutions Advisory Committee, because all three of those entities exist to help us study and develop strategies. CSAC, can you fit it in? There you go. And in my mind, that gives us a more robust and expansive and productive result. Thank you.
Commissioner Bangs.
Under economic development, I would like to pull in the evaluation of regulatory barriers and gaps.
Okay.
Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm going to have to apologize for my lack of input here, because as I read the packet, most of my comments are at the end of the process. That's where I kind of got into more detail. So let me be a little clearer. So are we looking, for instance, when Commissioner Bang said, I'd like to start with governance, and then she added a thought, was that coming from the page of 58? Or was it coming from page 10?
It was coming from the page of 83, but it was repeated on the page with the yellow headings on it, where the staff had consolidated items from the previous page of 83.
But I didn't see her comment, I'm sorry, on this page.
It's up at the top, in the top right box.
Oh, I'm sorry, I see it now. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
If I can, commissioners, I hate to hopefully not repeat myself too much, but I may not be very clear, so sorry. So this is really kind of a wide open exercise. All of the materials were really just to kind of spur, you know, any notions that you might have about priorities, and to give you a sense of what some of our stakeholders and some of our staff have identified. But I know that each of you have strong inclinations to what those priorities should be. And so in some regard, we could have just not populated this whole thing and it just had to be a blank slate. It's truly wide open on what your priorities are. And then in the second one, we can revisit those after we have further reflection. This is just part of that winnowing process too. And all the information in the packet was intended just to give you some brainstorm from some of our partners and our staff. So.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, sir. Given that, I would like a sticky note for childcare as a tier 1, because I see that as critical, essential to have on there. Thank you.
And I would agree with that as well. And Commissioner Bangs?
So I'm going to note a moment of frustration to say that our economic development is abysmally small in regards to without development, we can't provide for social services or really anything else. And so pulling from page 9, evaluate, I mean, we have an evaluation of we have a strategy study on this list. That's what I assume. And then the regulatory barriers. But I mean, I feel like we can do more. I don't know if it's housing inventory. I just feel like that just showcases, I mean, that's a limiting factor for us. If we don't have economic development, a lot of what is on our list can't occur. And so I feel like having one item on tier 1, which is a study and a strategy, just doesn't take us far enough.
So if I can piggyback on that, I really support, you didn't recognize me, sorry, Mr. Chair.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, there's an item here that says economic development training for the commissioners. I mean, I went to the Ellensburg conference. It was fabulous. So I don't know if we all go to Ellensburg or we get something like it to come here, that we have a Clatsop County specific focus thing. But I think to have commissioners all on the same page, sharing the same information, that results hopefully in collaborative strategies among ourselves and with our partners. Hot diggity, wouldn't that be swell?
Commissioner Webb?
Yes,
that was a request to have training. I don't see, did it come on there? Economic development training? Sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Webb?
As a former county economic development director in a state where economic development is taken very, very seriously at all levels of government, I would like to thank Commissioner Bangs and Commissioner Thompson for their input here, because I think this is one of our biggest issues in this county. And we don't have to just point to Cedar, which is overworked and et cetera, and rely on them to be our economic development entity, I think is leading us not down a good path. And I think that I would like to see this element be much more robust in terms of training, in terms of resources, in terms of, as Commissioner Thompson, I think, mentioned, our partnerships with Colpac and other organizations, which often are the source of where money for economic development comes from. I'd like to see this be a much more robust effort. I do acknowledge the fact that I think that I don't know whether or not we have the staff capacity to support this endeavor, however, but I think it certainly should be on our list of things that we sure wish we could do. Thank you.
Commissioner Bangs?
In the study and strategy, I would like to note that we do it out, not only within the municipalities, but outside, noting areas of potential growth like Westport, Napa, Swenson, other areas on 26 and 101. We're not all incorporated, but there are locations that have industrial lands that could be developed. And so I would like to kind of piggyback the development study and just make sure that we isolate that we're not just talking about municipality.
Well, I would just say it's not possible to move everything into tier 1, but I know we have to be conscious of that. But while we're just kind of discussing and brainstorming, levees and tide gates to me has always been a big issue, and especially in light of this flooding disaster that we had. I think as part of that is a internal drainage study, which is something that we're doing in Warrenton. Actually, they received some grant funding to do an internal drainage study, and it would probably be a massive undertaking for Clatsop County to try to take that on, but it's probably something that needs to happen, and we need to do an evaluation of the fitness of our levees and tide gates. That's very important, and certainly, I think we can consider that as a tier 1, but I mean, obviously we'll have to pare this down as we kind of go through this, but it certainly would get my vote. Commissioner Bangs and then Commissioner Thompson.
I will have to say, I'll be honest, I'm just spitballing ideas that I feel like are important. I haven't tiered them in my mind. I feel like after we've all put out what is important, maybe we can tier them later, but that's just a personal thought. I would like to say, moving from economic development and into infrastructure, I would like to say that I would like us to analyze our county-owned land for potential housing development. Do we own land that could be potentially used to increase our obvious need for housing? So that's just a thought.
Yeah, and if I could, Chair Quilla, Commissioner Banks, is the county has gone through our surplus in inventory of land, and we've identified some potential properties which will be part of that AOC technical assistance work that is up and coming.
Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. Isn't it lovely when we can say, yes, we've done that, or we're well in progress? So here's the thing I heard at Colpack yesterday. We had a presentation from Rachel Atnip from Tillamook County. What she said is this whole thing about FEMA flood insurance being connected with our adherence to NEPA, and FEMA is going to put in rules. And here's Mayor Balanceford said, yes, we joined the lawsuit. And Rachel's saying, if these FEMA rules go through and counties don't meet certain pretty impossible standards, then people and businesses will not be able to even repair or replace, let alone grow. So that whole levee tide gate water thing is not just environmental and not just infrastructure, it's also economic, because they really put the fear into us yesterday that our economy will be dead in the water for everything except parks if we don't take legal action. I don't know how all of those kinds of considerations fit into this, but the intersection of water, infrastructure, and economic development, there's a nexus there that FEMA and the NEPA, or sorry, the NOAA thing, too many acronyms, the fish folk. So I don't know where that goes, but I just heard it yesterday afternoon and it really spooked me. I don't even know how to characterize it to put it on here, but if we're looking at our economic sustainability, if we're looking at our infrastructure, if we're looking for our environment, there's got to be some place where we respond to big, hairy issues that we haven't twigged to yet that are legal, I think, but I don't know how. So it's just, that's what I had to say. Thanks.
And I think you make a really good point, Commissioner Thompson. It's bigger than levees and tide gates. This is floodplain management. This is environmental, salmon restoration, you name it. All of these things are interconnected and it needs to be evaluated. Okay, Commissioner Bangs.
Just to to kind of follow up, water infrastructure, inventory our water needs and resources, and water assessment. But I'm pretty sure that most of our small districts do their own water assessment. But we just need to kind of be in the know. I know I just recently got my own water health and assessment from our local district here in Napa. So I'm not sure what other districts do, but I just feel like we need to know what they're doing. And then we also need to be informed about the inventory, especially for development in our future. Is there a carrying capacity for development off that water district? And then, so there's a couple water questions I feel like that as a county we need to have answered. Question though, and this is for those who have a little bit more experience than I do. I know that we had a septage up, some sewer upgrades that occurred to reduce septage into our rivers. Do we still have septage issues going into our rivers right now?
Do you want me to speak to that, Don?
That's fine, Monica, if you'd like to.
Sure. So we do have ongoing concerns regarding septage going off, not being dumped appropriately. And we are continuing to work on trying to find a solution so that way our pumpers and haulers aren't limited on how frequently they're able to dump and being able to dump local here in Clatsop County. But yes, there are still ongoing concerns regarding the overflow of tanks and proper disposal of waste.
I feel like that's definitely a concern, especially an environmental concern. Again, I don't know what tier I'm putting these things in. I'm just putting it out there that is something that, I feel like if we are concerned about salmon restoration and we're concerned about environmental quality and water quality and basically just quality of our land, proper dumping of our septage should be a priority.
Commissioner Webb?
I think that when we were talking about creating some kind of an environmental action team, all of these issues were what we had in mind. Getting a better understanding of what water conditions are in the county, and that includes wetlands and tide gates and dikes, etc. And I would, to Commissioner Bang's question, yes, the water districts do quality and quantity analyses because by state law they have to do that and report to their constituents or their members, I guess is a better way to say it. But it's the rest of the county where we don't have good knowledge about the quality and quantity of our streams. This is primarily related to aquifers and to streams, which in some cases, in fact, are the source of some of our so-called municipal water systems. But this is something that we heard from an awful lot of people who are from hydrologists and people like that, who said we just don't have a good understanding of the quality and the quantity, just they say it over and over again, of our streams that are outside of water districts, which are often the source of water for many of our rural population who in fact get their water either from an aquifer, through a well, or from a spring in a stream or that kind of thing. So it's that kind of knowledge that we lack, is outside of those special districts. And I couldn't kind of see that in our list here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Thompson and then Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. So colleagues, Commissioner Webb, Commissioner Banks, yes, absolutely. That's what the AOC water inventory is for. So it's grassroots up, it's comprehensive all over the county. It's our data. Nobody's torquing it or tweaking it or filtering it out. our dishes, our dollies, our rules. That's why we love it. Thank you.
Then Commissioner Bangs.
I would say I'm not real favorable on creating an action team just because I want to make sure that the money that we're putting out, we're not doubling the job that somebody else has already done. I feel like we should be very analytical about how we spend public funding and make sure that we are not doubling somebody's research that has already been accomplished. I feel like in communication with other entities that we will be able to fill in a lot of these blanks that we have in our personal knowledge. But I just want to be really careful moving forward that it's that we put our monies to something that we have A, the ability to control, B, the ability to have an impact on, measurable, relevant to us, and just kind of make sure that we stay in our own lane.
Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks, because I really, I think that with the vigor that the AOC team is beginning to form, really does meet an awful lot of those needs. And so I really would, I definitely support that, and I hope that we'll be able to dedicate a lot to that group. And I think that several of these other issues under environmental quality will, to me, be taken care of. The one issue that I don't see making it through, however, is the issue of climate change. And the fact that so many of these natural resource-based things are going to be impacted by climate change. And I think we need to know about those. I think we need to be able to take those issues into consideration when we're doing infrastructure planning throughout the county. And I'm not sure that we have what's the right word, a vigorous enough understanding of what the local impacts, and that work, incidentally, has mostly been done. DLCD has done some wonderful work on climate change, and some of the other state agencies that monitor local resources have done that. But I think that climate change needs to be on our agenda because it relates, for instance, to the issues that Commissioner Thompson was talking about. You know, it relates to where we build and how we plan for resiliency. And with the issue, for instance, of flood insurance, you know, that's going to devastate a whole lot of our population if FEMA and EPA get together and put some teeth into the flood insurance program. That's going to be huge for us. And I think we really need to understand that and to know where, you know, to map in the county where those things are likely to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Thompson, then Commissioner Bangs.
Commissioner Webb, I believe you. I told you, my boy, the environmental economist, Mom, the only thing that works is Worldwide Climate Accord, and each one of us has to do things. So what I'm looking for is to be sensitive to what is the scope of our control as we have agreed upon data that is comprehensive. That is the toughest issue. Ask anybody who deals with forestry. Holy cow, how do we do that? This is a really significant issue, but because it inspires such terror and such a feeling of powerlessness, what often results is people look angry and sound angry. So I think our calling as the governing body of Clatsop County is to look at these issues in a way that is data supported, but that is complete, comprehensive, reliable, unbiased data to the extent that that's possible. Because I'm telling you, that stuff is hard to come by. Where do we find subject matter experts that don't have what translates to a political agenda? we, I hope, aren't looking to march into this looking for a political agenda. I hope that we engage with this essential topic in a way that inspires, I want to say, resilience, that sense of this is our scope, this we can have influence over, this we can have control over, this we can call attention to. I mean, the way the county manager tries to outline our impact as county commissioners, this is a huge issue. We can't hope to cover it all, but we have to engage with it in a way that inspires confidence and resilience. And I think that's the challenge. I don't know how to even put it into words, except to say it has to be unbiased and I want to say empowering. I mean, those are adjectives that we don't usually look at a strategic plan and say, we do this. And county manager, maybe you can help me put this in words that are more pragmatic and less airy-fairy.
I don't think I can improve on that, Commissioner. I think that, you know, I always look at and I could say this on a number of these issues, is I always look at ourselves at some point on a continuum. And certainly with climate change, there's so many elements to it. And I think on our list right now, we have a number of projects that would inform that discussion further. And so what I'm always looking at is just what is that iterative momentum that can take us to that next level of public policy relevance. And so, and that's what the strategic plan really is about, because on some of these issues, we are starting at a pretty foundational level with our knowledge and with the data. And so anything we can do to start building some of that data infrastructure, I think will be helpful as we start tackling the more challenging public policy needs. And from a staff perspective, that's something we can wrap our heads around to support you. You know, and then it falls into the political realm after that. So I think when we talk about some of these studies, whether it's economic development, whether it's the water study, all of that is going to help us as we talk about the next step of other impacts on the climate and other impacts on economic development, because they're all interrelated, as we know.
I see that Commissioner Banks.
Personally, I would like to avoid climate change as a strategic planning situation, just because of how emotional it is and how socio-political it is. I feel like as a county, we need to really focus on the things that we can control. And sadly, climate change is something that we can't control. Yes, with our water studies and with other investigative work with AOC, we will be able to analyze its impacts, but I don't think that this needs to be a strategic planning topic, because it's something that even if Clatsop County had zero emissions from now until forever, we won't have any impact on climate change. We are just too small in a very, very, very large pond. And it's not that I believe that climate change isn't real. It's just I want to really focus as a commissioner. My personal focus needs to be on things that I feel like our county can have impact on. And that would be housing and economic development and things that are within our realm of control. We have a lot of state and federal agencies that are addressing the climate change issue, and hopefully will be providing us some money as we move forward. And so it's just that's my personal thought process. Thank you.
Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't agree that climate change is an emotional issue. It's a scientific issue. And to me, it's a matter of making sure that our community is resilient in the face of climate change. We have a landscape here that is totally dependent on geographic factors. Totally, it's our resource base is geographic. You know, we don't have a General Motors plant anywhere in Clatsop County. So to me, the issue is that the last thing we should be doing is locating a public works facility in a floodplain, because to me, that's being very, very not resilient. And so to me, as we look at our natural resource base, we need to be fully aware that that the ocean is rising, and that the Columbia River is undergoing some incredible changes impacted by climate change that are going to impact the whole north coast of the county. And that when we plan for economic development, that we put resources and infrastructure into places that can be resilient in the face of established science about climate change. So to me, it's a very relevant issue, and it relates primarily to resiliency, because we certainly don't want to be doing all the other things we're talking about, doing economic development, understanding our resource base better. We don't want to do that without facing our ability and the imperative for us to be resilient in the face of known scientific factors. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Webb. I just one comment from on this subject. I mean, I agree with Commissioner Webb's comment. I don't think you ignore climate change and the impacts of climate change. I think it's one factor of many that can be rolled into our decision making on things like where you site a facility or the like. I guess my issue would be whether it's a tier 1 goal or a tier 1 thing that we're out there actively pursuing climate change agendas. I think that we don't ignore them, and we want to make sure that we incorporate climate change data into our decision making. But I guess that's my feeling, is that it's one of many factors that should be considered as we move forward. Commissioner Bangs?
I think we have plenty of federal agencies like DCLD and DOGAMI and of the such that are very good at informing our future decisions regarding economic development without us having to create an initiative of our own. I feel like there are already agencies that are on the front lines of analyzing the impacts of climate change, and really we don't have to copy their methodology. We just have to take their information and use it for ourselves as we move forward. So I guess I just, as a county commissioner, I don't want to dedicate tier 1 funding to something that you know we have federal and state agencies already doing. And I think that as commissioners, we are all intelligent in our decision making and moving forward in this process of infrastructure creation, that we will be able to take the federal agency information and make sure that our future decisions on locations and infrastructure development and economic development are thoughtful and thinking about our future. Because I agree, you know, placing future infrastructure in an unstable location would probably not be a good idea.
Commissioner?
I have a rock quarry that's going to be stable, you guys. No kidding, in my neighborhood. I really appreciate this discussion. I'm wondering, for me, this is a sticking point. This is a longer discussion. I wonder if we're ready to move on to the next stage. I don't want to try and drive the wagon here, but I think we could stay engaged in this discussion for a long time, and I think there's more we have to do today.
Yeah.
Terry?
Yeah, let me just do a check-in on process here. We're at 3:15, and we were going to try to get done before 4 so that you had time to do your second agenda item. If we were to go, here's my summary of where we are right now. Spend a little time getting clear on what we had done and what we were trying to do. And now we've had a pretty active discussion about things that were not in any of the tiers, and that where the tiers are the actions that would be called out in the next year's update of the strategic plan. And now we have a lot more there. And as Commissioner Coelho pointed out, maybe more than we can deal with. But it feels to me that if you were to stop right now, I'm not asking you to stop right now, but if you were to stop right now, it would be the staff responsibility to take all this information and then think about it a little bit more. Maybe we would ask, maybe we'd follow up with a survey with you to say, is there anything, now that you've had more time to think about it, is there anything else, a short one, just are there any other items that you want to see somewhere on tier 1, 2, or 3? We consolidate that and do some evaluation of it and bring that back for an exercise in the second retreat that would then be more focused because we had been through this one. So what I'm saying is, I feel like this has been useful and there's enough for staff to do, but there is something for staff to do here now that you won't get to. We're not going to be able to get to a final list today, I don't think. But I'm not worried about that. If Don, are you okay with that, or would you like to suggest something else?
I'll let Commissioner Banks go first, if that's okay.
I apologize. I just haven't gotten to the social service portion, and I wanted to mention something that is important to me. Is I noted that homeless initiatives and actions were on the social services page 11. I really would like to make sure that social services includes crisis stabilization and mental health support, given the most recent suicide off our bridge here that occurred less than 48 hours ago. And so I just feel like that is a huge hole that we have in our social services right now, is crisis stabilization and mental health services. So I feel like we should throw that on there.
Could I follow up, sir? And I would like to have, I agree with that, and would like to have a special emphasis for children. I've known 2 adolescents who committed suicide, and I don't know anything more heartbreaking than that. Their families will never recover, and their communities are still impacted. So absolutely, that kind of crisis intervention, but children. Thank you.
What I might mention, Commissioner Banks and Commissioner Thompson, is that right now we have it under infrastructure, but we can generalize that because there is an infrastructure component to it, which is what has been one of the major issues for us, is we don't have a facility that can house those that are in crisis so that they can get the support that they need. And that is something that Chair Coelho, CMH, CBH, a lot of us have been talking about. And honestly, it gets into this inequities in funding that's coming to rural counties. So yes, I think that is something that is certainly on all of our radar screens. It's important.
Commissioner Webb, you have your hand?
Yeah, I'd like to support this point wholeheartedly. I think it's incredibly important. I do think it's a work in progress. I think we have started doing some of this. We have a sheriff who is much more responsible to crisis management for mental health, et cetera. But I'd really love it to be a tier 1 issue. I think it's another pandemic that is happening in our county. Thank you.
And as county manager noted, I think it is as well. So I'm glad that we've all kind of weighed in on it.
So commissioners, if I might, I mean, I'm very sensitive to your time today and your energy, given what you've been through since early this morning. I think that what might be a step forward is all this has been very helpful, is that if we survey you between now and the next one and have you go through any of the materials that have been presented today, and if you just want to then throw out other potential additions to the list, we can then take all that information and come back with a more streamlined list that is actually originating from your board, and have that be the focal point for the next conversation, because we certainly don't want to lose anything, and I don't want this hour and a half to be limiting on what the final product is. So
If I could just add, Commissioner Toyoka isn't here, but he had mentioned to me he wanted to focus on veterans housing. And so I'm going to make bold to speak for him and add that to our list, veterans housing. Because I agree.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that is important. And I think that, we've been working on housing, but I think that is certainly something that we probably need to extend as another priority for next year, just like childcare, because that is just going to be an ongoing staff investment, board investment. So thank you for that. Sorry, I keep getting distracted. Terry asked me a question and I never answered it. Just following up, I think if we do the survey, come back again, that will give your board what you need to have the conversation that I think you would like to have to really get to the final list. And then we will memorialize that. So I think that is a path forward, if that sounds reasonable, Chair Coelho, members of the board, is that we still have the goal 19 discussion. And I feel like we've started this conversation, and I think a start is very helpful. So if that is reasonable, that might be the segue forward.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Could I ask just one question? Is that okay, Commissioner?
Yes, of course.
Okay. The survey, what is your, I think we've been on this before, and now I can't remember exactly, your preference for the best way to get a simple survey to you. Imagine that we take this mess of stuff that we have here and we get it consolidated into a couple of pages that says, here's all the stuff that made it into tier 1. Here's other stuff that you might consider. Here's all the background information. Get that all organized and send you that in a few pages. Do you want a survey that's online, or is it better to send you an email with say a PDF in it and have you just be able to print it and then scan it and send it back? What works best for people? We can do it any way. We can do it both ways.
Commissioner Webb, you had your hand up.
That I was just gesturing, meaning either way. It's whatever.
Yeah, either works for me. I mean, I like the online survey myself, but I'm certainly open to either one, whatever's easiest.
Okay.
Chair Coelho, members of the board.
Now that I know, at least if some people are open to it, we'll see if we can design it as an online survey, but we will also make a print copy, electronic copy that we can email out to people so that you can look at it online and try to make it as simple as, 4 questions, and then you can just get an email and type 1 and type in your answer. We'll try to keep it short. Thank you.
Yeah, that works for me.
Thank you, board, and thank you, Amanda and Terry, for helping us through this process. And I look forward to the next one, and thank you, board.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Terry. We appreciate you leading us through this, and I think this was a good discussion. I know that it isn't always easy, and you always, we often have different ideas on how things should go, but I do think that we're making real progress, and I like the survey idea as the next step moving forward. So, do you have any other items there, Terry?
Just to say thank you also, and just as a point of encouragement, you had 30 actions last year, and 25% of them were tier 1, roughly. And you, by staff's analysis, you expect to have completed 85% of those by June of 2022. That's astounding in any organization, and one that has been coping with COVID at the same time. It's not even believable. And in fact, it's so unbelievable. I started to hear today, well, maybe those things aren't really done. You got to do more on them. But it really is a pretty enviable record. And on tier 2, you were completed about 70% of them. So my sense is that this strategic plan is working for you. And if this is what it takes, a couple of retreats at the beginning of the year so that you can then get a work plan together and have your budget, focused on what your work plan is, I hope you're finding that it's worth the effort, because I think you're doing a great job of it.
I think that's an excellent point, Terry. Sometimes we don't celebrate our victories and our accomplishments, and it really is a testament to our county staff and all that they do, our administration, county manager, assistant county manager. That's, without their stick-to-itiveness and guidance and continued perseverance on all of these, they wouldn't get done. So I just really appreciate the work of our staff, and that's a great percentage. I agree to have that many of those items knocked out within the year. That's fantastic. So thanks again. Commissioner Thompson.
Sir, I'm celebrating, yay, hooray. I just wonder if this is a sustainable workload, because I don't know about anybody else's work-life balance, but man, mine's been way out of whack. And my assumption is that staff has been doing the same thing. When I hear from the assistant county manager, well, I'm here at 7:15 in the morning. I'm thinking, and it's 5:30 at night. Well, so I don't want to tell anybody how to live their lives, but I'd like us to engage with also issues of mental health and work-life balance, so that we achieve in ways that are sustainable and we don't just succumb to the pressures or whatever.
Good point, Commissioner Thompson. We didn't make it any easier by loading tier 1 projects up, but I agree with you. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Amanda.
Okay, thank you.
See you soon. Next item is the comp plan update, goal 19. It's on page 55. And our community development director, Gail Henriksen, is here, and I will turn it over to Gail.
Thank you, commissioners. And actually, I'm going to turn it over to David Cook. He is our new planner, and he prepared the memo and the draft that's before you today. David has been with us since the very last day of November or beginning of December, so still very new, but he has jumped in, and I just wanted to introduce him. So I will turn it over to David.
Great, David. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm David Cook. I'm a planner with Community Development. Staff is presenting draft 1 of County Goal 19 as part of our efforts to update the County Comprehensive Plan. Clatsop County adopted Goal 19 Ocean Resources in 2012 to implement the statewide Land Use Planning Goal 19, originally adopted in 1977 and updated in 2000. Goal 19 outlines state interest in conserving resources within the ocean stewardship area and addresses issues such as the dumping of dredge spoils and the discharge of waste products into the open sea, and prioritizes the protection of renewable marine resources over non-renewable resources. Goal 19 relies on the Oregon Territorial Sea Plan, which establishes in law a program of planning and management for Oregon state ocean resources. Goal 19 is closely related to Goal 16, estuarine resources, Goal 17, coastal shorelands, and Goal 18, beaches and dunes. The topic of cable landings will be addressed in Goal 18. The changes staff are proposing to Goal 19 are listed on pages 55 and 56 of your agenda packets and can be reviewed within the marked draft on pages 60 through 62. Staff is preparing additional information to include a section covering current conditions and future conditions to match the format of other updated comprehensive plan draft goals to be included within a future draft. At this time, staff is asking for feedback on draft 1 and is available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any questions, comments? There we go. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Webb.
Thank you. I think, as usual, our staff has done a terrific job preparing this. As you can tell by reviewing this, that this is the newest goal, I think, in Senate Bill 100, and I think it is something that is incredibly informative. And this is another one of those situations that Commissioner Banks was mentioning about the information that is available from state organizations. And this is something that that I think we can just step right into in terms of the findings of this state, the findings of these issues. I took a look, and there's not a lot of case law. You could almost write a book about every goal in our comprehensive planning process. You could probably write a book about the case law of each goal. But this is a relatively new endeavor. And I guess one of my questions was, when you all were going through this staff report, are there a lot of regulations pursuant to this? Is it kind of the usual DLCD? Well, I realize that regulations implementing goals vary enormously from goal to goal, but is there a lot of are there a lot of regulations which relate to some of the issues that you've raised in this?
There really are not, Commissioner Webb. So Goal 19 is implemented through Oregon Administrative Rules, Chapter 660-036, and there is very little in there. If you print it out, our joke in the office is the statewide goal is 3 pages, the OAR is 3 pages, and our goal is 3 pages. It's there's not much. And most of what is in OAR says we're going to basically acknowledge the territorial sea plan. There's some language about the burying of telecommunication cables and pipelines offshore, but there really is not a lot compared to many of the other goals. You're correct. Okay. So
I think, as you know, I'm very interested in this whole issue of the cable entering. I've talked with Ms. Hendrickson about this issue, and I was looking to OARs to give us a little help. And are you telling me that that's not going to be the case?
Well, not necessarily as part of Goal 19. As David mentioned, with Goal 18, we're going to be going more in depth with the cable crossings, and this is one of the goals that we will likely put out for a consultant to prepare. Okay. But that decision hasn't really been had or finalized yet. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And then would wind farm and wave farms, that would also be Goal 18 that would be addressing that?
I think that would actually fall more under this, because most likely they're going to be in that outside that 3-mile limit.
Okay.
Territorial limit. So.
Okay, Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, sir. I've been talking to people about this for a long, long time, so I'm interested that staff is looking at this. I don't know how you're going to work to keep us involved and integrated in these efforts, or how and it goes back to our strategic plan and the board rules. How do I integrate what I'm doing with you so that I'm well informed, you're well informed, and we're working in sync? So I'll just note that about this issue, because CREA and the National Department of Energy, I mean, I have meetings I attend often on these things. So how do we work together is my ongoing question. It's not to be answered today. It's just to be considered as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I agree with you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, I think that concludes the matter. Thank you, David, very much for the presentation. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you both.
Do we have any other items for the good of the order? You didn't, I think Commissioner Thompson was saying she wanted to spend a lot more time.
Let me sit nailed to this chair for another 10 hours. Sure, I can hardly wait. I'm telling you, it's been the way, but you know what? Good results. Good. It's good work, but holy cow.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good job. I thought everybody, it went well today. The Senate appointment was a good meeting, and certainly I appreciate our discussion today on the strategic plan as well. So thanks for everybody's endurance and stamina. Commissioner Bangs.
I just have one comment. I'm so glad that our chat bubble is disabled on our meetings. Just saying. Just saying.
Yeah, there's some interesting comments during that today.
There's a reason for that, isn't there? So
I agree.
I learned it today. It was pretty awesome.
Well, if we don't have anything else, we can go ahead and adjourn. Everybody have a great 3-day weekend. Take care. See you next week.